It's a problem. The rest of the world looks at that and they says, how can that be? I'll leave it to you to speculate on how this whole race is going to go. I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president. The studio was already tense before either man said a word. The lights were bright, the audience packed, and the cameras locked in tightly enough to make the whole country feel something explosive was coming. But nobody in that room understood just how uncomfortable the next few minutes were about to become. Because this was never just another political exchange. This was pride versus control, noise versus composure. And before the night ended, one of those approaches was going to collapse in real time. At center stage sat two different men, Donald Trump and Barack Obama. One leaned forward like he was ready to dominate the room. The other sat back calm, hands relaxed, eyes steady, looking less like a man preparing for a fight and more like a man prepared for whatever came next. Even the audience could feel the imbalance before the debate truly began. Trump looked hungry for combat. Obama looked ready for gravity, and that difference would become impossible to ignore. Trump opened the way he always does when he wants to control the air, fast, aggressive, certain. He talked about strength, action, winning. He said people do not want lectures, they want results. He talked about deals, military pressure, and the kind of leadership that breaks through weakness. He never needed to say Obama's name directly. Everyone in the room knew who he was targeting. A few people clapped, others shifted in their seats. Obama did not move, not even slightly. And strangely, that silence started becoming louder than Trump's words. The longer Obama stayed calm, the more Trump seemed determined to fill every inch of space. His voice got sharper, faster, more personal. Obama should have done it. Obama was worse. Obama gave them the absolute right, title, and interest, gave everything to Iran. Do you remember that when Bibi Netanyahu came over and begged him not to do it? The words came rapid fire now, not measured, not controlled. He was trying to force momentum through sheer volume, and for a moment it almost worked. Some people nodded, some applauded, but others started noticing something else. Trump kept glancing sideways. Obama never reacted. That was the part viewers at home could not stop watching. Because human beings instinctively notice imbalance. One person escalating while the other refuses to. One person demanding emotional control of the room, while the other quietly takes it without asking. Brushing aside Obama-era decisions, mocking old promises, and framing restraint itself as failure. He wanted the room to feel his energy and ride it with him. But the audience had already started noticing the contrast. One man looked reactive and irritated by the silence across from him. The other looked composed, steady, and unwilling to perform on Trump's timetable. And then something happened that changed the entire rhythm of the night. The moderator turned to Obama. There was a pause. A long one. Not awkward, intentional. Obama looked first at the crowd, then at Trump, then back toward the moderator. And when he finally spoke, the room leaned in instead of erupting. That mattered. Because power is not always about who speaks loudest. Sometimes it's about who forces everyone else to become quiet. He answered in the kind of calm voice that forces people to listen more closely. He said leadership is not only about building things people can see, but trust people can feel. It is about serving critics as well as supporters. Action matters, he said, but without honesty, action becomes performance. That line hit harder than people expected. You could actually see audience members stop moving. No coughing, no whispering, just attention. And Obama kept going, slowly, carefully, like someone tightening pressure instead of releasing it. He said there is a dangerous kind of politics that turns every disagreement into a personal insult, every criticism into betrayal, and every institution into something that matters only if it serves the ego at the center. Then came the sentence that visibly changed Trump's expression. He said, "That is not strength. It is insecurity with authority." The line landed hard, not because Obama yelled it, because he didn't. Trump tried to laugh, but the laugh came out thin, forced, a little too fast. And viewers noticed immediately. You know those moments when someone realizes the room is slipping away from them, but they try to smile through it anyway? That was the moment. Trump tried to reclaim momentum, but the audience was hearing him differently now. Obama had moved the argument somewhere Trump could not easily dominate, not into emotion, into discipline. And suddenly Trump's interruptions felt less powerful than before, more desperate, more reactive. And here is where the story shifts completely, because Obama was not finished, not even close. He kept going, still unhurried, still controlled. He said real leadership is tested when the questions get harder, when the room is not obedient, when the answer is not obvious, and when your ego does not get the last word. That sentence created visible tension across the studio. People knew exactly who he was talking about, but Obama never raised his voice enough to sound emotional, which somehow made it more brutal. Anyone can look strong in a room designed to cheer for them, he said. The real measure comes when you are told no. And then, he brought up COVID. The atmosphere changed instantly, because suddenly this was no longer about style or personality, now it was about consequences, managing COVID so far. Basically, what they're telling you now is you ain't seen nothing yet. Trump's saying he might in this election, he's been saying he might declare victory before all the votes have been counted. Well, that's just what he did on this virus. And how did that turn out? That line hit the room like a cold wave. No screaming, no theatrics, just the sound of people realizing where Obama had been leading the conversation all along. The applause started building, not wild, not chaotic, serious, heavy. The kind of applause people give when they feel something is true even if it makes them uncomfortable. Trump immediately jumped back in. He had to, because silence after that would have looked devastating. So he tried to reduce it all to style. Another lecture, he said, another polished speech, another performance from a man who talked beautifully and left weakness behind him. For a second, some viewers thought the momentum might swing back. But then Obama did something that completely changed the emotional balance again. He refused to chase Trump into anger. That was the trap, and he would not step into it. Instead, he looked almost disappointed. Not furious, not offended, disappointed. And psychologically, that landed harder. Because anger creates conflict. Disappointment creates judgment. Obama said style was not the issue when substance kept pointing to the same pattern. A leader who confuses volume with authority, loyalty with virtue, and spectacle with service. The room got quieter again. Trump shifted in his chair. Obama looked directly at him now. No smile, no dramatic expression, just steady eye contact. And then he delivered the line people would replay online for days. He said the country has seen enough shouting disguised as strength, enough ego disguised as leadership, enough spectacle disguised as public service. What Americans are hungry for now, he said, is steadiness. That word hung in the air. Steadiness. Simple, but devastating in context. Because suddenly the entire night could be summarized in one contrast. One man pushing constantly for attention, the other proving he did not need to. People want a president who can carry pressure without turning it into drama, who can accept facts without treating them like insults, and who understands that the office is bigger than the person occupying it. Let that sit for a moment, because the room certainly did. You could actually see audience members exchanging looks. Not because Obama had humiliated Trump with some explosive insult, but because he had done something psychologically worse. He reframed Trump's entire behavior as evidence against him. Every interruption now felt emotional. Every outburst felt defensive. Every attempt to dominate suddenly looked like proof of the criticism itself. Trump tried talking over the applause that followed. But that only made the contrast clearer. Obama waited. Trump pushed. Obama stayed composed. Trump sounded like a man trying to take back a room that had already moved on from his rhythm. And then came the moment viewers remember most. Not because it was loud, because it was quiet. Trump interrupted again. Obama stopped speaking, looked at him, and said nothing. 3 seconds, 4 seconds. The audience started laughing nervously. Trump kept talking, but now he sounded disconnected from the room, like someone arguing with momentum itself. And when Obama finally spoke again, his voice was even calmer than before. He said, "If every criticism feels like an attack, leadership becomes impossible." That was it. No shouting, no insult, no dramatic gesture. And somehow it hit harder than everything before it. Because everyone watching understood exactly what he meant. Even people who disagreed politically could feel the emotional difference between the two men. One was trying to overpower discomfort, the other was completely comfortable inside it. And that was why the moment spread. It was not because Obama shouted him down, it was because he did something more devastating. He defined the chaos without becoming part of it. That distinction mattered. A lot. Because audiences remember emotional contrast more than individual lines. And the contrast that night became impossible to ignore. Trump had entered the room expecting combat. Obama turned the conversation into evaluation. Trump wanted volume. Obama forced reflection. Trump tried to dominate emotionally. Obama made emotional control itself become the subject. And suddenly Trump was fighting on terrain that punished every instinct he relied on. The cameras captured everything. The clenched jaw, the forced smile, the interruptions coming faster. Meanwhile, Obama barely changed expression. At one point, even the moderator looked unsure whether to interrupt because the tension had become bigger than the questions themselves. This was no longer television. It felt personal, not in the sense of insults, in the sense of exposure, because what viewers were watching was not simply a disagreement between two politicians. They were watching two completely different definitions of strength collide in real time, and only one of them seemed to be growing more controlled under pressure. That was the fatal shift. Trump kept trying to pull the conversation back into conflict. Obama kept pulling it back into character. And character is harder to argue with when your behavior keeps reinforcing the accusation. By the end, nobody cared who sounded louder. They cared who sounded steadier. Trump had tried to overpower the room with force, certainty, and grievance. Obama answered with clarity, patience, and precision. And in doing so, he made that force look smaller than it wanted to appear. But the final twist came after the cameras were supposedly cutting away. People in the audience were still staring at the stage, some applauding softly, others silent. Not because they had witnessed a dramatic knockout, because they had witnessed something rarer. A man refusing to become emotionally infected by chaos. And in modern politics, that felt almost shocking. Trump leaned back at the end with the expression of someone who knew the energy had shifted but could not fully explain why. Obama simply nodded once toward the moderator. Calm, controlled, finished. And that image became the lasting memory of the night. Not rage, not shouting, not dominance, composure. Because for one brutal stretch of live television, Barack Obama did not just answer Donald Trump, he exposed him. Not with anger, not with insults, but with something far more dangerous in front of millions watching live. Control. And once the audience saw the difference between performance and steadiness, they could not unsee it.